What is up, guys? Delboy here. So Dillian Whyte beats the crap out of Lucas Browne and stops him brutally in 6 rounds in a career best performance. This was a really enjoyable display from Dillian Whyte, and I think it's one to get people excited and to get people talking and finally give this guy a little bit of credit. Now, going into this fight, I was relatively confident in picking Dillian Whyte. I felt that people were over-exaggerating Lucas Browne's chances going into it. To me, Lucas Browne, a lot of people were referring back to the Shagayev fight. Now, that was a Lucas Browne who was at a career lowest in terms of weight. And it was a younger Lucas Browne. It was a more active Lucas Browne. And for whatever reason, people kept on referring back to that and acting like that was the version of Browne who was going to turn up. By judging his shape leading up to this fight, I knew that was never going to be the case. I said before that we'll get the Lucas Browne from the Rudenko fight. Slow, cumbersome, heavy, hittable and limited. And that's exactly what we got. You know, he lost that Rudenko fight. I'll keep on going back to it. Lucas Browne is a guy who, to me, is extremely limited. But he's a big lump with big power. That's all he's got. All he's got is a right hand and a pouring jab, you know. And for the most part in his career, he's turned up out of shape. You know, like I said, we can go back to fights with Rudenko, and also he fought the guy for the Commonwealth title, the Canadian guy, and he looked terrible in that fight. He looked terrible against Julius Long. We can keep on going back to these fights where he's looked bad and looked out of shape and looked slow. That was always the version of Lucas Browne where he's going to get tonight. I don't know why people kept referring back to the Shagayev fight. It wasn't a factor and it wasn't relevant. But yeah, I was really confident going into this fight that Dillian Whyte would have too much. I felt Dillian's variety and his activity would be too much for Browne. Dillian was a quicker guy, and both quicker with feet and with his hands. And overall, I just feel he's a better fighter. To be completely honest, he's got more strings to his bow. You know, Dillian's just a better fighter, and I felt people going into this fight were underrating his skill set compared to Lucas Browne's. I just don't get where people were getting the 50-50 thing from. To me, the bookies had it right, but yeah, it was still a really impressive performance from Dillian Whyte. Sorry. The thing that impressed me the most was his composure and the way he held it together throughout the fight. Dillian Whyte in the past has always been a guy who has been very, very, very erratic, and a guy who sometimes lets emotions get the best of him. Sometimes he gets dragged into wars that he doesn't need to get into. Sometimes he gets too excited and he'll miss badly and leave too many gaps and openings for opponents to counter. You know, look at the Hellenius fight, for example, where he gets countered early on. But yeah, tonight I felt he held it together really well. He boxed behind his jab. He finally made the most of his long reach. You know, he popped that jab with that right hand behind it. The first 2 to 3 rounds, Dillian was working behind his jab, right hand behind it. Just outboxing Lucas Browne, keeping the range. Lucas Browne got Dillian against the ropes occasionally, landed a few clubbing right hands, but Dillian always saw them coming and he was rolling with them and sometimes blocking them. And in the first 2 to 3 rounds, Dillian was just outboxing Lucas Browne and making easy work of him, to be completely honest. And in these rounds, you could see Lucas Browne's face slowly starting to deteriorate. You know, his eye was cut, his face was starting to get mashed up, and I felt that basically from round 2 onwards, it was a matter of time before Lucas Browne was getting stopped, basically. After the 3rd round was when Dillian really started to mix it up and really started to put the pressure on Lucas Browne. He kind of obviously still used his jab and right hand, but he started to mix it up. He started to let his hands go, introduce that left hook, put 2s and 3s together, and get a bit more creative in there. And he really started to bust Lucas Browne up. And as it went on, he was just having more and more success, and Lucas Browne was having no success. Browne was falling in. He was missing with his right hand. He struggled to do anything really, man. He was just a punching bag in there. and in round 6 he walks into a big left hook that flatlines Lucas Browne, and it was a scary knockout. It was great to watch. It was brutal, but it was one of those knockouts where you say, just get up. You know, you need to get up. And he was out for a long time, and I was pleased to see him regain consciousness and and he looked healthy after. So that was the main thing. But credit to Dillian Whyte. I was really impressed with his performance. Don't get me wrong, I picked him to win. I'm not surprised he won, but what I am impressed with was the composure and the way he boxed to a game plan. That's something we've not really seen Dillian do too often. He did it against Ian Lewison at times, but I felt this was the most complete performance of his career so far in a fight where a lot of people felt he could potentially lose. So credit to Dillian Whyte. After the fight, he called out Deontay Wilder. Listen, man, I would like to see that fight. If Joshua versus Wilder can't happen next, why not have Dillian Whyte versus Deontay Wilder? It'll be a fun fight. It'll be a fun build-up. Two wild guys going at it. And listen, if Johan Duhaupas deserves a shot, if Eric Molina deserves a shot, if Arthur Spilker deserves a shot, if Gerald Washington deserves a shot, Dillian Whyte does. He's done more than those guys. He deserves a shot more than those guys. So I don't want to hear that Dillian Whyte is not worthy of fighting Deontay Wilder when this guy's been feasting on cans for God knows how long. It's taken him 40 fights to fight a top 5 operator. So I don't want to hear people say, oh, Dillian Whyte doesn't deserve a shot. Don't want to hear that. If we're going to go by the standards Deontay Wilder has set, Dillian more than deserves his shot at a world title. Throughout his career, he's fought better competition than Wilder, and he's had less fights. So don't tell me that Dillian Whyte doesn't deserve a shot. Again, I'm not saying he's going to beat Wilder, but he'll make it a fun fight. He'll give it a good go. He'll throw down, and you know he's not going to leave that ring feeling like he didn't give it his all. And that's all you can ask, and that's what Dillian does every single time. Again, sometimes he's technically deficient, sometimes he's very open, but he'll give it a go. And yeah, tonight I felt Dillian boxed the best fight of his career. Don't get me wrong, there are still flaws there. He still misses wildly at times, especially with those uppercuts. And the right hand as well, sometimes he'll fall really, really short with it, and sometimes he'll miss wildly with it. That's always been a problem in Dillian's career, his accuracy. And he still needs to tidy that up. He really does, because he could walk into a big shot. He's already walked into big shots by doing that, but he's still got flaws. But I felt tonight he ironed those out to a certain extent, and it was less. They happen less often, which is a good thing. To me, Dillian, actually, I made a note of it on Twitter. I said it on Twitter. Dillian Whyte has been a guy who. This is another thing about Dillian Whyte. When he fights, he always sees the counter opportunities. If you watch him fight, he'll see the opportunities to counter, but he's just so inaccurate at times. It's really frustrating because his vision is really, really good. Watch his fights back. His vision is really good. He sees the counter opportunities. His technical ability and his accuracy is just a little bit off at times. If he could just sort that out, he'd be a good fighter, man. He is a good fighter now, but he'd be a much better fighter than he is now if his accuracy was at a decent standard. He'd be a lot better than he is now. He's a frustrating fighter at times. I feel sometimes he gets a little bit underrated because like I said earlier, his variety is good. He's got good output. He's a tough guy, and he can fight a bit on the inside. Not saying he's a master boxer, because he's not. He's defensively open, but I feel sometimes people shit on him a little too often. I like Dillian Whyte. I think he performed well tonight, and I'm pleased for him. I hope to see him get a big fight next. What do you guys think? Peace.